Good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to be with you in this virtual setting. And I'm going to just take a moment. I want to share my screen with you. Megan, thank you for that wonderful introduction. It does very much capture why I am in campus ministry, because it's the relationship to God and the faith community, and seeing that develop in students that is so meaningful for me. I also like to share fun facts because I think it's a way of helping us build community and get to know one another. And so one of the real interesting things about me is that when I moved to Chicago, I was looking for a new hobby. And so I took up sailing, and I now race sailboats, and just completed the Chicago to Mackinac sailboat race 2 weeks ago on Lake Michigan, which is the longest freshwater race in the world. So my topic today is planting seeds to bear fruit. And what I hope to do with this is to actually have you engage your imagination and consider the ways in which your ministry might thrive. And this talk presentation sort of comes off of the sowing the seed, but also think of all the other metaphors in both the Old Testament and New Testament that are related to planting and nurturing and harvesting. And so that's definitely going to be sort of like what my presentation is going to be like today. So one of the things that happens in higher education is there are many models for constructing learning outcomes and doing assessment of those learning outcomes. But for us as campus ministers, I would propose an imaginative model based in Ignatian spirituality that aids us in getting at the deeper transformative processes of our ministry that are not easily measured by standard assessment models. And so to start, I actually want to start with a little imaginative reflection exercise. So enter into these images and the music and into the wonder of creation and that gift that God has given to us with that creation. The earth cry out. Let all the earth cry out. Out to God with joy. Earth cry out. Shout gently to God on the earth. Sing praise to the glory of His name. Proclaim His glorious praise. Say to God, how tremendous are and sing praise to you. Sing praise to your name. Come and see the works of God. His tremendous deeds among the children of man. To God. We're going to start with some foundations from Ignatian spirituality. And the first is that in Ignatian spirituality, Ignatius tells us that our desires are holy desires because they have been planted within us by God. And then the second premise is the role that imagination plays. And so I want you to imagine yourself holding seeds or the fruits of your ministry. A little ironic that all the images I shared had to do with seeds seeds for legumes and rice, and I don't think there are any fruit seeds in there. But again, we're talking about living, growing things. And your ministry is one of those that is alive and growing. So what I want you to do is to imagine actually holding seeds or fruits as you imagine what are the seeds that you are going to plant. If we were in person, I actually would probably have bunches of seeds that people, could physically have, because I think it's so important that we, in our prayer, that we're able to bring all of our senses into that prayer. So the first part that I want to ask is, what is the fruit of your ministry that you would like to harvest? So we're actually starting with the end in mind. And I've got some examples up here and of some things that you might, be thinking about. I know that earlier today you had, I think, Josh Packard as one of your keynote speakers. I had the opportunity to hear him speak, I think it was back in April, and he really talked about the social isolation that our college students have experienced due to the pandemic and the importance of community. And so I'm actually, the example I'm going to work through with all this is community, but you could take, something that, the fruit is a deeper intimacy with the Trinity. Or it could be that you are working on something that is related to social justice, and so you want to look at how the Old Testament prophets addressed justice. Another thing that can be a really hot topic is the commitment to environmental sustainability. Or you might have a particular group of students that you've been working with, and there is some part of their leadership and their formation as disciples of Christ that you would like to enhance. And you actually have, I've created a worksheet for you where you can actually work through these questions on your own. But what I would invite you to do now is just to think of like one particular aspect of your ministry. So then, coming sort of back to that of sort of measuring, because so much in higher education, we want to measure things. And the work that we do does not easily lend itself to being measured. And so what I like to ask is, how do I know that this particular fruit of my ministry manifests itself? So I'm going to use community here as an example. I know students have formed community when they know each other's names and their stories. I know that community is fostered when students have shared experiences. And this can be through worship, faith sharing, service. But also you can ask students and they will articulate that they have a sense of belonging. For me, the imaginative part of this exercise was selecting a fruit that embodied community for me. I chose grapes because they grow together in clusters. And then the next aspect is, how is the fruit of your ministry nurtured? And again, using community as an example. Icebreakers are really important in the work that we do. And we do all kinds of ones, some that are silly, but I also want us to be thinking about icebreakers that move students from more shallow to more personal topics. where it really lays a foundation where they feel the safety and the security to talk about themselves, and can even in that sharing come to a greater awareness of their God-given gifts. And so that, and those can happen in different, different kinds of settings, whether it's in some kind of meeting, certainly on a retreat, or even if it's a structured like Bible study or small faith sharing group. Something else that nourishes or nurtures community is consistent time together. With our first year students, when they come and they say, I want to get involved in campus ministry, one of the things that I tell them is they've got to show up, okay? They have to be in places with other students who are involved in campus ministry. And it can be really, really difficult because when they first step foot on campus, they don't really know anyone. And what I tell them to do is come to Mass every Sunday. And what we do after our 9 p.m. Sunday Mass is we have a social. And for us, it's the extension of that community. And so by them showing up on a weekly basis, they're able to talk afterwards with other students, and get to know them. Hopefully we'll also get them volunteering as music ministers, in the other liturgical aspects. But that part about like consistently showing up, and we also do things like we offer to say prayer, we offer Eucharistic adoration. Any of those things, if they are consistently showing up, they're going to get a sense of who some other people are. And I will also say, sort of like on the flip side, there are also experiences that are much more immersive. Things like urban plunges, retreats, where and they're actually structured so that students, get to know one another. But it is that getting them to that point where they know people's names and something of their stories is really, really important. And now the next thing when I say time at table, this grows out of us being a Eucharistic people, and gathering around the table for fellowship with Jesus and with Jesus's companions. And I would imagine that in all of your ministries, you probably realize that if you serve food, students will show up. So that's, I think, just an important thing. As much as we want to be intentional, respectful, there's also times where we just need to have some fun together. And so I have a practice in many of my meetings with students that about every third time we're meeting, I might ask them when we're doing introductions to say a fun fact about themselves. It's really typical that we're doing things like your name, your major, where are you from, where you might live on or near campus, okay? And those are all basic facts, but it doesn't really, give you a sense of who is the person underneath. And so, and sometimes we've done fun facts like what was your first summer job, or what's your favorite, summertime food. So sometimes the fun fact can be a themed one, and sometimes it can be just really broad. I think another thing that fosters that community is asking students about their experience and sense of belonging. And this might be something that you're doing more like on a one-off, but what you're listening for is what is helping a student, especially someone who might be a little bit more shy, what is helping them to make friends and become part of the faith community. I also think by getting that feedback from the students, we are able to have the courage to make adjustments. Sometimes, there's something that we are doing really well, and we think we're doing it really well, but getting that feedback from students is really, really important. And I'm going to use sort of, as a way in which we already did that is for our 9 p.m. Mass, we would do a social about once a month, but we would do it prior to Mass. And a lot of students would not show up for that. And then there was one of our sacristans who was very active in our faith community, and he made the recommendation to me that could we move the social after Mass? And he said, and for the first 4 weeks of the semester, could we have premium food? So 1 week it's ice cream, another it's pizza, and we do that for like the first 4 weeks to really encourage students, to come over. After that, we would go with like prepackaged crackers and cookies. Now, in the midst of the pandemic, I don't know that we're going to be able to do pizza, but we'll probably go to more like prepackaged things. They do tend to be grab and go, but when we have like 300 or 400 students at that Mass, we'll get about 50% of them actually come over afterwards, for that social. And so I think this is the part in terms of a model for us as ministers of really being able to think about our ministry being informed by the scriptures, and how we, I don't like to use the word success. I much more like to think about like, what is the fruit? What comes forth? And hopefully it's going to be, and as we know, sometimes fruit can be sour, sometimes it can be sun-sweetened, kissed. And so our ministry can have all those different kinds of aspects.